Right. The question here really relates to, first of all, looking at the map, what we need to know exactly where these cities are and the significance of it. And this is one of the major aspects about the ecclesiastical sources of Shia and Muslim and Sunnis and where the political environment was. So if you look closely, Turkey, Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, Jordan, those areas were part of Ottoman Empire, and they were basically Sunnis. If you look at the Iran, this was the Shiites, and the time that we're talking about is around mid-1800s. So we're looking at 1844, this is a few years, this is probably in the middle of 1830s that this story is coming up. Now, if you look closely, there are cities like Mashhad, which is on the northeast of Iran, and this is really the Mosque of Imam Reza, which is the largest mosque in the world. The shrine, right, the shrine of Imam Reza. So, and this is the most revered and the first Shiite site is the shrine of Imam Reza. And it's the second largest, actually, mosque to hold people. It's that large. But it's the largest from an area point of view. And this is really the source of Persians, the most revered. Then the second one relates to Karbala and Najaf. And these two areas, Karbala is the basically burial of Imam Hussein. Now, Imam Hussein and, of course, right. So Imam Hussein and Hazrat Abbas, which was the half-brother of Imam Hussein, which were basically both martyred during that fight that he had. It wasn't a fight, but he was basically captured on the way to Kufa when Yazid, which is the Khalif at the time, intercept him and basically martyred him and Abbas. And their mosques are in Karbala. Now remember, Karbala is, so these are the centers of the Shiite doctrine. And guess where they are? They're right in the middle of the Sunni dominated caliphs. So this, and the centers of the education of Shiites, or they call it marja taqlid, means the source of following, basically. Imitation, this is good. Source of the imitations were in these areas. So if somebody wanted to go and get learned, talk to those people and go to this Islamic school, they would go Najaf, Karbala, and Mashhad. These were the sources. So Imam Reza, which is again, we discussed, is Mashhad. Hussein and Abbas and his half-brother, and they were called Babul Hussein, Abbas. Babul Hussein and Qamar Bani Hashim. Actually, Muhammad told about Abbas that he's the moon of my family, which were the Bani Hashim. And this is called, when you hear probably people remember Qamar Bani Hashim, was actually the label to Abbas. And he was martyred badly, actually, in that fight that they had with, which both of them were slain. And they're both buried in Karbala, and they have, these are the second largest, basically, holy ground for Shiite. Even it has more significance than Mecca, for Shiite, of course. Now, Imam Ali Holy Shrine, also known as Masjid Ali, it's in Najaf, which is really south of the Karbala. Okay, so these are the significant areas where, of course, Imam Ali, they claim to be the first Imam, and obviously he became the fourth Khalif generally. So this gives you an idea of where things are. Now let's go one page down. Now the question is really the twin manifestations that we're talking, second coming and twin manifestation. So Sunni Islam believes in Al-Mahdi. These are references. We're going to look at the references in Quran. Al-Mahdi, the right guided one. Mahdi means Hidayat Shode. This means that guided by God, basically. Isa Masih, and there are references in Quran to both of these, Al-Mahdi and Isa Masih. Now, Isa is Jesus. Masih means Messiah. Okay? So remember this title of Messiah, and now, obviously, this is Ahl Sunnat or Sunnis believe in this, which are direct literal references in Quran regarding these two comings. Now we'll see in the interpretation of Shia Islam. You go a little bit further down. And the reason I read that prayers from the sixth Imam was related to Messiah and the importance, and he basically was the source of references of Shia relates to this return of Imam Hussein, which we're going to discuss. So here, Shiite says, Qa'im, or this Al-Mahdi in the Sunni that is referenced, really it is in name, it is the 12th Imam, return of the 12th Imam. So Al-Mahdi and Qa'im are one and the same, and it's the 12th Imam for Shiite, but it's references to Sunnis, but Sunnis, they don't really link it to 12th Imam. Now, return of Imams Hussein or Messiah, although they're strictly, and we're going to go to those phrases, this is really pivotal for us to understand the differences between these two and why there are two comings. Return of Imam Hussein, because Messiah is a generic name of basically Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, which is although it says Isa Masih in return of Isa Masih, the Shiites believe that this is really a generic name of Messiah that belongs to basically return of Imam Hussein. So in his literature, and we're going to go to that area of literature of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq that actually links the Messiah to Imam Hussein. Is that clear? Go left. Now, what are Baha'is claim? Baha'is claim that the Báb was the Al-Qa'im, return of 12th Imam, and Al-Mahdi is the same thing. And he was from Ahl Bayt. That means that he was actually descendant of Muhammad. That's why he had a green turban. And this is also in Quran also, that he says that the Qa'im, which was the Báb, is from Bani Hashim, is from my family. So we're going to see these references and see why Baha'is are claiming, which is in basically fulfills those prophecies that are in Quran and interpretation of both Sunni and Shia related to return of Imam Hussein or Messiah. So in response, Mary pointed, this is in Quran. In response, Mary pointed to her son, and they were talking to the kings, right? This is in Quran. Telling them to talk to him. They were angered at this and thought she was mocking them by asking them to speak with an infant. It was then that God made the infant, Isa, which is Jesus, speak from the cradle, and he spoke of his prophecy of the first time. He said, which are verse this in chapter of Maryam in the Quran, he said, I am indeed a servant of Allah. He had given me revelation and made me a prophet. And he hath made me blessed wheresoever I be, and hath enjoined on me prayer and charity as long as I live. He hath made me kind to my mother and not overbearing or miserable. So peace is on me the day I was born, the day that I die, and the day that I shall be raised up to life again. So this is really a reference of Sunnis that's saying that is a return of Jesus. Jesus has said, now you go a little bit down and we see second coming. So regarding this second coming, according to Islamic tradition, we describe this graphically. Isa, which is Jesus, descent will be in the midst of wars fought by Al-Mahdi. So now the two characters are at the same time. The right guided one, Mahdi means the right guided one, known in Islamic eschatology as the Redeemer of Islam against Al-Masih ad-Dajjal, an Antichrist, false Messiah. And his followers, Isa, Jesus, will descend at the point of a white arcade east of Damascus, dressed in the yellow robe, his head anointed. He will then join Al-Mahdi in his war against the Dajjal, or Antichrist. Isa, considered as a Muslim, will abide by the Islamic teaching. Eventually, Isa, which is Jesus, will slay the Antichrist, and then everyone who is one of the people of the book, Ahl Kitab, referring to Jews and Christians, will believe in him. Thus, there will be one community, and that of Islam. Now, this is from Sheikh Bukhari. This is one of those. The other one, which is quite interesting. The hour will not be established until the son of Maryam, Isa, descends amongst you as a just ruler. He will break the cross, kill the pigs, and abolish the jizya tax. This is the money, the tax that non-Muslim had to pay to the government to basically be operating under their own system. Interestingly, this is a misconception that the Muslims were basically taxing the non-Muslim. Reality was that the taxes on Muslims were a lot higher than the jizya, because they had khums and zakat, which you had to pay enormous amount of money to the clergy to really run the government. So the jizya was a smaller tax, actually, and non-Muslims. Money will be in abundance so that nobody will accept it as charitable gift. After the death of Al-Mahdi, Isa, which is Jesus, will assume leadership. This is a time associated in Islamic narrative with universal peace and justice. Islamic texts also allude to the appearance of Yajuj and Majuj, known as also Gog and Magog, and these are references also in Bible as well. Ancient tribes which will disperse and cause disturbance of earth. God, in response to Esau's prayers, will kill them by sending a type of worm in the napes of their neck. Esau's rule is said to be around 40 years, after which he will die. Muslims will then perform the funeral prayers for him and then bury him in the city of Medina. in a grave left vacant beside Muhammad. Abu Bakr and Umar, companion of Muhammad, the first and second Sunni caliphs. Go a little bit further down. So we saw the Sunni perspective and the literature that refers in Quran regarding the Sunni position of Qa'im and basically return of Jesus, okay? So now let's go talk about why Shiites saying there are two manifestations. Okay, go down. Okay, now Shia twin manifestation. The term Mahdi means guided by God. Hidayat shode, right? A Messiah is a savior or... So what is the meaning of Messiah? Messiah is savior or liberator of a group of people, most commonly in Abrahamic religion. In the Hebrew Bible, a Messiah or Mashiach is a king or highest priest. So Messiah was the title of Isa, Jesus in Quran. So they really, when they say in Quran, Shiites say no, it wasn't really Isa that, or Jesus that's going to come back. It's the Messiah that is going to come back. And who is this Messiah? So it says Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, which is sixth Imam, is explaining. That's where the source of the Shia is Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq. In explaining the passage of Quran which says, then return we, Messiah, unto you to turn, to prevail against them and aided you, saying that return is meant the return of Imam Hussein. So this Shia 12ers reference to Quran to a Messiah, and they say, no, this is Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq said that this is return of Hussein, which is the synonymous to, in Sunni, Shia Messiah, Jesus Messiah. He says, no, it's Imam Hussein Messiah, but they're both Messiahs. So this is return of Imam Hussein. The companion will announce the return of Al-Hussein to the people at the same time. The Imam says, the believer should not doubt him, since he is neither Antichrist, Al-Dajjal, nor the devil. The Quran will be among the people. When the people have gained certainty about his being Al-Hussein, the Quran will die, Qa'im will die. So this is really return of Imam Hussein. The Qa'im, which is the return of 12 Imams, would die, and then Al-Hussein will perform his funeral rites and bury him. If you look at what happened, the dates are very important. I'll show you. It's quite interesting that the basically duration of the Baha'u'llah's basically reign as far as leader of the religion was 40 years. Now you see references to Shiite that say how long the Qa'im is going to last. So it's quite interesting. These had nothing to do with Baha'i doctrine. These are straight from Islamic books, right? So let's say, so as I die and I say we perform the funeral for him. So the sources basically says Baharul Anbar, and these are Baha'i. So Al-Qaim. Now let's look at, so we know the Zuhur Hosseini, or return of Hussein, right? Al-Qaim is a Messiah-like figure synonymous with Mahdi in Sunni Islam. Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Mahdi is believed by 12 Shia Muslim to be the Mahdi. So remember, that child that disappeared had also the name of Mahdi at the end. Or that was one of his titles. And they say that he's the one who's going to return as Qa'im, and ultimate savior of humankind, and the final Imam of the 12 Imams, who will emerge with Isa, Jesus Christ, in order to fulfill their mission of bringing peace and justice to the world. 12 Shias believe that Al-Mahdi was born age 69, and assumed imamat at 5 years of age following the death of his father, Imam Hassan Askari. So let's look at where the sources are. Muhammad said, congratulations to person who meet the Qa'im, one who will rise from my Ahl Bayt. So Qa'im, the 12th Imam, is going to be one of my descendants, right? And has firm belief in him. Before his advent, he will have love for his friends and will distance himself from his enemies and will have love for the leaders of guidance, the Imams, who came before him. Indeed, these are my true friends, those whom I have love and affection for, and they are the noblest of people from my nation. This is in Baharul Anwar. Imam Ja'far ibn Ja'far Sadiq, Muhammad, as the Shia Muslim consider him to be the 6th Imam, said, during that time, the period of occultation, await the advent of the Imam every morning and evening. This is in Usul Kafi. So this is why when Muslims pray 5 times a day, they're really mentioning his coming, that they're waiting for his coming. So this, now say, when is he going to come? The appointed time will not come until the one from among us, the Ahl Bayt, descended on Muhammad, will rise with the truth and make his advent. And this will take place when Allah, the Noble and Grand, permits. So whoever obeys him shall be saved, and whoever goes against him will be destroyed. Go a little bit further down. Okay. Imam Ja'far Sadiq, each one of you must prepare your weapons for the advent of Qa'im. Remember in the prayer that we read, it says, even if I'm dead, which he knew he would be dead by that time, I would basically rise up from my grave with my sword, trying to basically defend him. The prayer that we read, right? Even if it be as little as an arrow, because when Allah, the High, knows that a person has this intention, then he will give him a longer life. Okay, there's a paragraph also I can show you later on. Actually, it says the reign of Mahdi is 9 or 19 years, which is exactly the same amount of time that they martyred the Báb. Okay, so now it gives you a perspective regarding the two comings and where these sources are. When the movement of, for example, Sheikh Ahmad Ahsa'i and Siyyid Kazim-I-RASHTÍ, when they were going into, for example, Karbala, was because that was the center of learning at the time and was the tomb of Imam Hussein. Because they were saying that that's where this thing is going to be revealed. So both Sheikh Ahmad and Siyyid Kazim-I-RASHTÍ, they were saying is that the coming of the Qa'im is imminent. So now we're going to read this story. Chapter 2. Yeah, the reason in Shia Islam they don't mention return of Hussein, emphasizing it because they're waiting for Mahdi to come and kill all the infidels. So they're really concentrating people on the first phase, but they don't say that the return of Jesus come in and establishes basically truth and happiness and unity in the world. They don't like that portion of it because they say, no, the whole world is ends. It's a silly argument. Why would we need, God needs manifestation to come and kill anybody? They could destroy the earth in one shot and everybody goes home. Why go through this process? It's so bizarre, the conception. And this is why new manifestation comes in, to erase all these basically interpretation, false interpretation that has been entered into Islamic culture that caused dilapidation of their societies. And you see now, it's very clear how their societies have degraded to a level which even they themselves, in 1974, actually, all the Muslim scholars gathered in Egypt and basically say that if this is the latest message of God, and if we have interpreted everything properly to what Quran said, and this is, you're talking about the World Congress of all the Muslim scholars, Shiites, Sunnis, Wahhabis, whoever. Why is it that we're the poorest people on earth? We're the least educated. We're least, basically, healthiest. Our cultures are backward. We're not progressing. So they were questioning themselves. What happened? So this is not something that we from the West are looking at them strangely. They understand this themselves. And of course, they missed, and per Quran, which we read, they say that what they're going to do to this twin manifestation, the Muslims are going to do to this twin manifestation, is unheard of in the history of mankind. What they have done to these two manifestations. And now they're paying the price because they're not accepting the new manifestation, so they're suffering because of it. This is why when you go against the Holy Spirit in Christian term, this is exactly the writing of the new manifestation. If you go against reality, what's going to happen? You get destroyed. And this is the result of it. Please.
Chapter 2. The Mission of Siyyid Kazim-I-RASHTÍ. The news of the passing of his beloved master brought unspeakable sorrow to the heart of Siyyid Kazim. Inspired by the verse of the Quran, fain would they put out God's light with their mouths, but God only desireth to perfect his light, albeit the infidels abhor it. He arose with unswerving purpose to consummate the task with which Sheikh Ahmad had entrusted him. He found himself, after the removal of so distinguished a protector, a victim of the slanderous tongue and unrelating enmity of the people around him. They attacked his person, scorned his teachings, and reviled his name. At the instigation of a powerful and notorious Shia leader, Siyyid Ibrahim-i-Qazvini, the enemies of Siyyid Kazim leagued together and determined to destroy him. Thereupon, Siyyid Kazim conceived the plan of securing the support and goodwill of one of the most formidable and outstanding ecclesiastical dignitaries of Persia, the renowned Haji Siyyid Muhammad Baqir-i-Rashtī, who lived in Isfahan, and whose authority extended far beyond the confines of that city.
Okay, let's stop here. We can follow later. So remember, when basically Sheikh Ahmad Ahsa'i passed away, he appointed basically Siyyid Kazim-I-RASHTÍ as the successor. And guess what happened? He was the only challenge to the Shia Usulis that were left, because the Akhbaris were wiped out by the Shia Usulis that believed in this basically occultation and all those imams and imamat and hierarchy, that there is no reference of this hierarchy of ayatollahs and so on and so forth in Quran at all. It's the same way as is man-made in basically popes and in Christianity, the same ecclesiastical. These guys, they saw a chance because now the leader of the opposition to the Shia 12ers that said, no, Muhammad didn't raise, his body didn't raise and his spirit rose, and this 12th Imam is imminent, he's coming. Now they found the window to attack his successor, although he was very scholar, but he wasn't as well known in the Shia community as a leader and thinker. So because he had established and he had the support, remember, Sheikh Ahmad had support of the government also, government of Iran at the time. So they couldn't touch him. The minute he wiped out, this is what happened. So they banded together and tried to kill the movement because they were saying, remember, if new manifestation comes in, what's going to happen? All the ecclesiastical structure will collapse. None of these mullahs or mujtahids had anything to say or do or business, because their business was collecting taxes and telling people what the Quran says. Now imagine somebody's trying to put you out of business and you have a chance to get rid of them. Right? So now read.
This friendship and sympathy, Siyyid Kazim thought, would enable him to pursue untrammeled the course of his activities, and would considerably enhance the influence which he exercised over his disciples. Would that one amongst you, he was often heard to say to his followers, could arise and with complete detachment journey to Isfahan and deliver this message from me to that learned Siyyid. Why is it that in the beginning you showed such marked consideration and affection for the late Sheikh Ahmad, and now have suddenly detached yourself from the body of his chosen disciples? Why is it that you have abandoned us to the mercy of our opponents? Would that such a messenger, putting his trust in God, might arise to unravel whatever mysteries perplex the mind of that learned Siyyid, and dispel such doubts as might have alienated his sympathy. Would that he were able to obtain from him a solemn declaration testifying to the unquestioned authority of Sheikh Ahmad, and to the truth and soundness of his teachings. Would that he also, after having secured such a testimony, might visit Mashhad, and there obtain a similar pronouncement from Mirza Askari, the foremost ecclesiastical leader in that holy city, and then, having completed his mission, might return in triumph to this place.
So their defense was to get the two most well-known mujtahid. One is Mashhad, one in Isfahan, that was leader of Shiite movement, that were actually believed in the Shaykhi movement, or Sheikh Ahmad Ahsa'i, and they believe that he's really has illusion that they don't even understand. So that's why nobody rose against him, because they believed in his writings. And so their defense was to send an emissary to these two mujtahid to get really a document from them that really Shaykhi movement is basically good and is talking the truth. So that's really the whole story revolve around these two figures.
Again and again did Siyyid Kazim find opportunity to reiterate his appeal. None, however, ventured to respond to his call, except a certain Mirza Muhit-i-Kirmani, who expressed readiness to undertake this mission. To him, Siyyid Kazim replied, "Beware of touching the lion's tail. Belittle not the delicacy and difficulty of such a mission." He then, turning his face towards his youthful disciple, Mullah Hussein-i Bushrui, the Bab, addressed him in these words: "Arise and perform this mission, for I declare you equal to this task. The Almighty will graciously assist you and will crown your endeavors with success." Mullah Hussein joyously sprang to his feet, kissed the hem of his teacher's garment, vowed his loyalty to him, and started forthwith on his journey. With complete severance and noble reserve, he set out to achieve his end. Arriving in Isfahan, he sought immediately the presence of the learned Siyyid. Clad in mean attire and laden with the dust of travel, he appeared amidst the vast and richly apparelled company of the disciples of that distinguished leader, an insignificant and negligible figure. Unobserved and undaunted, he advanced to a place which faced the seat occupied by that renowned teacher. Summoning to his aid all the courage and confidence with which the instructions of Siyyid Kazim had inspired him, he addressed Haji Siyyid Muhammad Baqir in these words: "Hearken, O Siyyid, to my words, for response to my plea will ensure the safety of the faith of the Prophet of God, and refusal to consider my message will cause it grievous injury." These bold and courageous words, uttered with directness and force, produced a surprising impression upon the Siyyid. He suddenly interrupted his discourse and, ignoring his audience, listened with close attention to the message which this strange visitor had brought. His disciples, amazed at this extraordinary behavior, rebuked this sudden intruder and denounced his presumptuous pretensions. With extreme politeness, in firm and dignified language, Mullah Hussein hinted at their discourtesy and shallowness, and expressed surprise at their arrogance and vainglory. The Siyyid was highly pleased with the demeanor and argument which the visitor so strikingly displayed. He deplored and apologized for the unseemly conduct of his own disciples. In order to compensate for their ingratitude, he extended every conceivable kindness to that youth, assured him of his support, and besought him to deliver his message. Thereupon, Mullah Hussein acquainted him with the nature and object of the mission with which he had been entrusted. To this the learned Siyyid replied, "As we in the beginning believed that both Sheikh Ahmad and Siyyid Kazim were actuated by no desire except to advance the cause of knowledge and safeguard the sacred interests of the faith, we felt prompted to extend to them our heartiest support and to extol their teachings. In later years, however, we have noticed so many conflicting statements and obscure and mysterious allusions in their writings that we felt it advisable to keep silent for a time, and to refrain from either censure or applause." To this Mullah Hussein replied, "I cannot but deplore such silence on your part, for I firmly believe that it involves the loss of a splendid opportunity to advance the cause of truth. It is for you to set forth specifically such passages in their writings as appear to you mysterious or inconsistent with the precepts of the faith, and I will, with the aid of God, undertake to expound their true meaning." The poise, the dignity and confidence which characterized the behavior of this unexpected messenger greatly impressed Haji Siyyid Muhammad Baqir. He begged him not to press the matter at this moment, but to wait until a later day, when in private converse he might acquaint him with his own doubts and misgivings. Mullah Hussein, however, feeling that delay might prove harmful to the cause he had at heart, insisted upon an immediate conference with him about the weighty problems which he felt impelled and able to resolve. The Siyyid was moved to tears by the youthful enthusiasm, the sincerity and serene confidence to which the countenance of Mullah Hussein so admirably testified. He sent immediately for some of the works written by Sheikh Ahmad and Siyyid Kazim and began to question Mullah Hussein regarding those passages which had excited his disapproval and surprise. To each reference the messenger replied with characteristic vigor, with masterly knowledge and befitting modesty.
So here basically it shows that this particular Sayyid, and Sayyid is descendant of Muhammad also. They had a green turban. So these are really, not only they were marja' taqlid, but they were descendant of Muhammad. So their words were very weighty, and he was really, didn't approve or disapprove the Sheikh Ahmad last few years because he couldn't understand a lot of stuff that he was saying. Now, this Mullah Hussein Bushru'i, the messenger of basically Siyyid Kazim-I-RASHTÍ, came and tried to describe actually those allusions, what they meant, so they could get approval from this Sayyid regarding validity of their cause.
And just for clarity, this is the same Mullah Hussein who goes to the Báb's house on May 23rd in 1844. This is how he learned to become spiritual enough to find the Báb.
Right. His name was Báb, means the door of the door. Is the first disciple of Báb. They recognized him.
He continued in this manner in the presence of the assembled disciples to expound the teachings of Sheikh Ahmad and Siyyid Kazim, to vindicate their truth and to defend their cause, until the time when the muazzin, calling the faithful to prayer, suddenly interrupted the flow of his argument. The next day, he similarly, in the presence of a large and representative assembly, and whilst facing the Siyyid, resumed his eloquent defense of the high mission entrusted by an almighty providence to Sheikh Ahmad and his successor. A deep silence fell upon his hearers. They were seized with wonder at the cogency of his argument and the tone and manner of his speech. The Siyyid publicly promised that on the following day he would himself issue a written declaration wherein he would testify to the eminence of the position held by both Sheikh Ahmad and Siyyid Kazim, and would pronounce whosoever deviated from their path as one who had turned aside from the faith of the Prophet himself. He would likewise bear witness to their penetrative insight and their correct and profound understanding of the mysteries which the faith of Muhammad enshrined. The Siyyid redeemed his pledge, and with his own hand penned the promised declaration. He wrote at length, and in the course of his testimony paid a tribute to the character and learning of Mullah Hussein. He spoke in glowing terms of Siyyid Kazim, apologized for his former attitude, and expressed the hope that in the days to come he might be enabled to make amends for his past and regrettable conduct towards him. He read himself to the disciples the text of this written testimony, and delivered it unsealed to Mullah Hussein, authorizing him to share its contents with whomsoever he pleased, that all might know the extent of his devotion to Siyyid Kazim.
Let's stop here. This is called fatwa. Now you're hearing this in the news that this high clergy did a fatwa, and you see how powerful these things are, and in terms of propagating. And sometimes even they issued, for example, in case of Salman Rushdie, they issued his death, for example. Or there are a lot of, so these elements have such a power, and that's why they were trying to get fatwas from this leader of the religion, especially a Sayyid, which was descendant of Muhammad.
No sooner had Mullah Hussein retired than the Siyyid charged one of his trusted attendants to follow in the footsteps of the visitor and find out the place where he was residing. The attendant followed him to a modest building which served as a madrisi, and saw him enter a room which, except for a worn-out mat which covered its floor, was devoid of furniture. He watched him arrive, offer his prayer and thanksgiving to God, and lie down upon that mat with nothing to cover him except his abba. Having reported to his master all that he had observed, the attendant was again instructed to deliver to Mullah Hussein the sum of 100 tumans, and to express his sincere apologies of his master for his inability to extend to so remarkable a messenger a hospitality that befitted his station. To this offer Mullah Hussein sent the following reply: "Tell your master that his real gift to me is the spirit of fairness with which he received me, and the open-mindedness which prompted him, despite his exalted rank, to respond to the message which I, a lowly stranger, brought him. Return this money to your master, for I, as a messenger, ask for neither recompense nor reward. We nourish your souls for the sake of God. We seek from you neither recompense nor thanks." The Quran 76:9. My prayer for your master is that earthly leadership may never hinder him from acknowledging and testifying to the truth. Haji Sayyid Muhammad Baqir died before the year AH 1260, AD 1844, the year that witnessed the birth of the faith proclaimed by the Báb. He remained to his last moment a staunch supporter and fervent admirer of Siyyid Kazim. Having fulfilled the first part of his mission, Mullah Hussein dispatched this written testimony of Haji Sayyid Muhammad Baqir to his master in Karbala, and directed his steps towards Mashhad, determined to deliver to the best of his ability the message which he was charged to give to Mirza Askari. Immediately the letter, enclosing the Siyyid's written declaration, was delivered to Siyyid Kazim, the latter was so rejoiced that he forthwith sent to Mullah Hussein his reply, expressing his grateful appreciation of the exemplary manner in which he had discharged his trust. He was so delighted with the answer he received that, interrupting the course of his lecture, he read out to his disciples both the letter of Mullah Hussein and the written testimony enclosed in the letter. He afterwards shared with them the epistle which he himself had written to Mullah Hussein in recognition of the remarkable service he had rendered him. In it, Siyyid Kazim paid such a glowing tribute to his high attainments, to his ability and character, that a few among those who heard it suspected that Mullah Hussein was that promised one to whom their master unceasingly referred, the one whom he so often declared to be living in their very midst, and yet to have remained unrecognized by them all. That communication enjoined upon Mullah Hussein the fear of God, urged him to regard it as the most potent instrument with which to withstand the onslaught of the enemy, and the distinguishing feature of every true follower of the faith. It was couched in such terms of tender affection that no one who read it could doubt that the writer was bidding farewell to his beloved disciple, and that he entertained no hope of ever meeting him again in this world. In those days, Siyyid Kazim became increasingly aware of the approach of the hour at which the promised one was to be revealed. He realized how dense were those veils that hindered the seekers from apprehending the glory of the concealed manifestation. He accordingly exerted his utmost endeavor to remove, gradually, with caution and wisdom, whatever barriers might stand in the way of the full recognition of that hidden treasure of God. He repeatedly urged his disciples to bear in mind the fact that he whose advent they were expecting would appear neither from Jabulka nor from Jabulsa. A footnote says, mysterious cities, from one of which Imam Mihdi will appear. He even hinted at his presence in their very midst. You behold him with your own eyes, he often observed, and yet recognize him not. To his disciples who questioned him regarding the signs of the manifestation, he would say, he is of noble lineage. He is a descendant of the prophet of God, of the family of Hashim. He is young in age, and is possessed of innate knowledge. His learning is derived not from the teachings of Sheikh Ahmad, but from God. My knowledge is but a drop compared with the immensity of his knowledge. My attainments a speck of dust in the face of the wonders of his grace and power. Nay, immeasurable is the difference. He is of medium height, abstains from smoking, and is of extreme devoutness and piety. Certain of the Sayyid's disciples, despite the testimonies of their master, believed him to be the promised one, for in him they recognized the signs to which he was alluding. Among them was a certain Mullah Midi-i-Kui, who went so far as to make public this belief, whereupon the Siyyid was sore displeased, and would have cast him out from the company of his chosen followers had he not begged forgiveness and expressed his repentance for his action. Sheikh Hassan-i-Zunusi himself informed me that he too entertained such doubts, that he prayed to God that if his supposition was well-founded, he should be confirmed in his belief, and if not, that he should be delivered from such idle fancy. I was so perturbed, he once related to me, that for days I could neither eat nor sleep. My days were spent in the service of Siyyid Kazim, to whom I was greatly attached. One day at the hour of dawn, I was suddenly awakened by Mullah Nawruz, one of his intimate attendants, who in great excitement bade me arise and follow him. We went to the house of Siyyid Kazim, where we found him fully dressed, wearing his abba, and ready to leave his home. He asked me to accompany him. A highly esteemed and distinguished person, he said, has arrived. I feel it incumbent upon both of us to visit him. The morning light had just broken when I found myself walking with him through the streets of Kabila. We soon reached a house, at the door of which stood a youth, as if expectant to receive us. He wore a green turban, and his countenance revealed an expression of humility and kindliness which I can never describe. He quietly approached us, extended his arms towards Siyyid Kazim, and lovingly embraced him. His affability and loving kindness singularly contrasted with the sense of profound reverence that characterized the attitude of Siyyid Kazim towards him. Speechless and with bowed head, he received the many expressions of affection and esteem with which that youth greeted him. We were soon led by him to the upper floor of that house, and entered a chamber bedecked with flowers and redolent of the loveliest perfume. He bade us be seated. We knew not, however, what seats we actually occupied, so overpowering was the sense of delight which seized us. We observed a silver cup, which had been placed in the center of the room, which our youthful host, soon after we were seated, filled to overflowing, and handed to Siyyid Kazim, saying, "A drink of a pure beverage shall their Lord give them." Quran 76:21. Siyyid Kazim held the cup with both hands and quaffed it. A feeling of reverent joy filled his being, a feeling which he could not suppress. I too was presented with a cupful of that beverage, though no words were addressed to me. All that was spoken at that memorable gathering was the above-mentioned verse of the Quran.
So here, when you're looking at it, it's basically Sheikh Hassan Zunuzi is talking. So this is with Siyyid Kazim-I-RASHTÍ that they went to visit Báb, basically. And this important sentence from Quran, remember, in Quranic term, drinking off of a silver cup is forbidden. So what he mentioned in this sentence is that really the verses of Quran says, drink this pure beverage, shall their Lord give them. That means that I am basically the one that you're looking for.
Soon after, the host arose from his seat and, accompanying us to the threshold of the house, bade us farewell. I was mute with wonder. I knew not how to express the cordiality of his welcome, the dignity of his bearing, the charm of that face, and the delicious fragrance of that beverage. How great was my amazement when I saw my teacher quaff without the least hesitation that holy draught from a silver cup, the use of which, according to the precepts of Islam, is forbidden to the faithful. I could not explain the motive which could have induced the Siyyid to manifest such profound reverence in the presence of that youth, a reverence which even the sight of the shrine of the Sayyidu Shuhada had failed to excite. 3 days later, I saw that same youth arrive and take his seat in the midst of the company of the assembled disciples of Siyyid Kazim. He sat close to the threshold, and with the same modesty and dignity of bearing, listened to the discourse of the Siyyid. As soon as his eyes fell upon that youth, the Siyyid discontinued his address and held his peace, whereupon one of his disciples begged him to resume the argument which he had left unfinished. "What more shall I say?" replied Siyyid Kazim, as he turned his face toward the Báb. "Lo, the truth is more manifest than the ray of light that has fallen upon that lap." I immediately observed that the ray to which the Siyyid referred had fallen upon the lap of that same youth whom we had recently visited. "Why is it," that questioner inquired, "that you neither reveal his name nor identify his person?" To this the Siyyid replied by pointing with his finger to his own throat, implying that were he to divulge his name, they both would be put to death instantly. This added still further to my perplexity. I had already heard my teacher observe that so great is the perversity of this generation, that were he to point with his finger to the promised one and say, "He indeed is the beloved, the desire of your hearts and mine," they would still fail to recognize and acknowledge him. I saw the Siyyid actually point out with his finger the ray of light that had fallen on that lap, and yet none among those who were present seemed to apprehend its meaning. I, for my part, was convinced that the Siyyid himself could never be the promised one, but that a mystery inscrutable to us all lay concealed in that strange and attractive youth. Several times I ventured to approach Siyyid Kazim and seek from him an elucidation of this mystery. Every time I approached him, I was overcome by a sense of awe which his personality so powerfully inspired. Many a time I heard him remark, "O Sheikh Hassan, rejoice that your name is Hassan, praiseworthy, Hassan your beginning and Hassan your end. You have been privileged to attain to the day of Sheikh Ahmad. You have been closely associated with me, And in the days to come yours shall be the inestimable joy of beholding what eye hath not seen, ear heard not, nor any heart conceived. I often felt the urge to seek alone the presence of that Hashemite youth and to endeavor to fathom his mystery. I watched him several times as he stood in an attitude of prayer at the doorway of the shrine of the Imam Hussein. So wrapped was he in his devotions that he seemed utterly oblivious of those around him. Tears ring from his eyes, and from his lips fell words of glorification and praise of such power and beauty as even the noblest passages of our sacred scriptures could not hope to surpass. The words, "O God, my beloved, my heart's desire," were uttered with a frequency and ardor that those of the visiting pilgrims who were near enough to hear him instinctively interrupted the course of their devotions and marveled at the evidences of piety and veneration which that youthful countenance evinced. Like him, they were moved to tears, and from him they learned the lesson of true adoration. Having completed his prayers, that youth, without crossing the threshold of the shrine and without attempting to address any words to those around him, would quietly return to his home. I felt the impulse to address him, but every time I ventured an approach, a force that I could neither explain nor resist detained me. My inquiries about him elicited the information that he was a resident of Shiraz, that he was a merchant by profession, and did not belong to any of the ecclesiastical orders. I was, moreover, informed that he, and also his uncles and relatives, were among the lovers and admirers of Sheikh Ahmad and Siyyid Kazim. Soon after, I learned that he had departed for Najaf on his way to Shiraz. That youth had set my heart aflame. The memory of that vision haunted me. My soul was wedded to his till the day when the call of a youth from Shiraz, proclaiming himself to be the Báb, reached my ears. The thought instantly flashed through my mind that such a person could be none other than that self-same youth whom I had seen in Karbala, the youth of my heart's desire. When later on I journeyed from Karbala to Shiraz, I found that he had set out on a pilgrimage to Mecca and Medina. I met him on his return, and endeavored, despite the many obstacles in my way, to remain in close association with him. When subsequently he was incarcerated in the fortress of Marku in the province of Azerbaijan, I was engaged in transcribing the verses which he dictated to his amanuensis. Every night, for a period of 9 months, during which he was a prisoner in that fort, he revealed, after he had offered his evening prayer, a commentary on a juz of the Quran. A juz is 1/30th of the Quran. At the end of each month, the commentary on the whole of that sacred book was thus completed. During his incarceration in Marku, 9 commentaries on the whole of the Quran had been revealed by him. The texts of these commentaries were entrusted in Tabriz to the keeping of a certain Siyyid Ibrahim-i Khalil, who was instructed to conceal them until the time for their publication might arrive. Their fate is unknown until now. In connection with one of these commentaries, the Báb one day asked me, "Which do you prefer, this commentary which I have revealed, or the Ahsanul-Qisas, my previous commentary on the Surah of Joseph? Which of the two is superior in your estimation?" "To me," I replied, "the Ahsanul-Qisas seems to be endowed with greater power and charm." He smiled at my observation and said, "You are as yet unfamiliar with the tone and tenor of this later commentary. The truths enshrined in this will more speedily and effectively enable the seeker to attain the object of his quest." I continued to be closely associated with him until that great encounter of Sheikh Tabasi. When informed of that event, the Báb directed all his companions to hasten to that spot and extend every assistance in their power to Qudus, his heroic and distinguished disciple. Addressing me one day, he said, "But for my incarceration in the Jabal-i-Shadid, the fortress of Shirik, it would have been incumbent upon me to lend my personal assistance to my beloved Qudus. Participation in that struggle is not enjoined upon you. You should proceed to Karbala, and should abide in that holy city, inasmuch as you are destined to behold with your own eyes the beauteous countenance of the promised Hussein. As you gaze upon that radiant face, do also remember me. Convey to him the expression of my loving devotion." He again emphatically added these words, "Verily I say, I have entrusted you with a great mission. Beware lest your heart grow faint, lest you forget the glory with which I have invested you." Soon after, I journeyed to Karbala and lived, as bidden, in that holy city. Fearing that my prolonged stay in that center of pilgrimage might excite suspicion, I decided to marry. I started to earn my livelihood as a scribe. What afflictions befell me at the hands of the Sheikhis, those who profess to be the followers of Sheikh Ahmad and yet fail to recognize the Báb. Mindful of the counsels of that beloved youth, I patiently submitted to the indignities inflicted upon me. For 2 years I lived in that city. Meanwhile that holy youth was released from his earthly prison, and through his martyrdom was delivered from the atrocious cruelties that had beset the closing years of his life. 16 lunar months, less 22 days, had elapsed since the day of the martyrdom of the Báb, when on the day of Arafi, that is the 9th day of the month of Jil Hijri, in the year AH 1267, that is the 5th of October AD 1851, while I was passing by the gate of the inner courtyard of the shrine of the Imam Hussein, my eyes, for the first time, fell upon Baha'u'lláh. What shall I recount regarding the countenance which I beheld? The beauty of that face, those exquisite features which no pen or brush dare describe, his penetrating glance, his kindly face, the majesty of his bearing, the sweetness of his smile, the luxuriance of his jet-black flowing locks, left an indelible impression upon my soul. I was then an old man, bowed with age. How lovingly he advanced towards me. He took me by the hand, and in a tone which at once betrayed power and beauty, addressed me in these words: "This very day I have purposed to make you known as a Bab'i throughout Karbala." Still holding my hand in his, he continued to converse with me. He walked with me all along the market street, and in the end he said, "Praise be to God that you have remained in Karbala, and have beheld with your own eyes the countenance of the promised Hussein." I recalled instantly the promise which had been given me by the Báb. His words, which I had regarded as referring to a remote future, I had not shared with anyone. These words of Baha'u'lláh moved me to the depths of my being. I felt impelled to proclaim to a heedless people at that very moment, and with all my soul and power, the advent of the promised Hussein. He bade me, however, repress my feelings and conceal my emotions. "Not yet," he breathed into my ears. "The appointed hour is approaching. It has not yet struck. Rest assured and be patient." From that moment, all my sorrows vanished. My soul was flooded with joy. In those days, I was so poor that most of the time I hungered for food. I felt so rich, however, that all the treasures of the earth melted away into nothingness when compared with that which I already possessed. Such is the grace of God, to whom he will, he giveth it. He verily is of immense bounty. I now return, after this digression, to my theme. I have been referring to the eagerness with which Siyyid Kazim had determined to rend asunder those veils which intervened between the people of his day and the recognition of the promised manifestation. In the introductory pages of his works, entitled Sha'i Qasidi and Sha'i Qutbi, he, in veiled language, alludes to the blessed name of Baha'u'lláh. In a booklet, the last he wrote, he explicitly mentions the name of the Báb by his reference to the term Zikrullah-i-Azam. In it he writes, addressing this noble zikr means mention or remembrance, addressing this noble zikr, this mighty voice of God, I say, I am apprehensive of the people, lest they harm you. I am apprehensive of my own self, lest I too may hurt you. I fear you. I tremble at your authority. I dread the age in which you live. Were I to treasure you as the apple of my eye until the day of resurrection, I would not sufficiently have proved my devotion to you.
Great. So let's stop here. We're running out of time. So here, Sheikh Hassan Zunuzi is telling these stories, and later on it says that Báb told him that in Karbala you're going to see Hussein. Remember? And the Baha'u'lláh, without knowing about this thing, he introduced himself as Hussein to Sheikh Hassan Zunuzi. So this is really the story that it's describing how this Sheikh Hassan Zunuzi is telling the story of how he met Baha'u'lláh. And Baha'u'lláh told him that you can't talk about this to anyone. But he wanted to fulfill the promise of Báb to Sheikh Hassan.